Hi, Timothy Eckert here. Good morning and welcome to my Java 101 series. This is the third video that I'm doing in the series. In this video, we're going to start to look at if-else statements, and I have a file that I've created, a class in my source folder called if-else008. I'm going with the numbering naming convention. I believe I'm on 8, just to kind of keep track of where we are in the lessons. I'm going to go ahead and create a main method here. And that's auto-completing based off my IDE. I type main and hit tab. But if you're just using a simple text editor, you want to type out public static void main, and then within parentheses string, open and close square bracket, space args. Okay. All right. So let's set a variable. We'll set a variable called int age, and I'm going to set it to my age, which is 46. And then we'll have an if-else conditional. So this helps change the control flow of our program. So let's say if age is greater than or equal to 21, we're going to print out something like you can enter the bar. Okay, so I'm using keyboard shortcut, typing S out here and hitting tab. That gives me system.out.println. Again, if you don't have these keyboard shortcuts, just type out system.out.println. Okay, and then we'll say something in double quotes here. You can enter the bar. Cool. Then we're going to do an else if. So we can do an else if. Now, we can say something like age is greater than or equal to 18. And we'll print a statement here. We'll say, get rid of the side thing here. You can not enter the bar, but you can vote. Okay, and then finally we'll have an else, and that's going to be people under 18. We'll do something like we'll print out you are a minor, something like that. Okay, so now you'll see that I'm getting a little warning in my IDE. Condition age is greater than 21 is always true because I've hard-coded in my age here. But we're going to change that in a minute, make it a little bit more interesting. But let's go ahead. We'll build this program. You can see, hopefully you can see that going. Oh, by the way, I'm using a little bit different theme today. If you notice, the coloring is a little bit different just to spice it up. It's bright or dark if you're trying to follow along exactly. But, I figured let's spice it up a little bit and go a little dark. Okay, anyways. Come on. Computers is going, where's my caffeine? Where is my coffee? Okay, so here you go. You can enter the bar. Okay, we knew that was going to happen. Our IDE told us that was going to happen. Condition age is greater than equal to 21 is always true. Okay, so let's make this a little bit more interesting. And let me just show you a few more things. So if I said like something like 18, okay, well, then it's going to, let's build and run it again. We'll do a hard code of 18. And then we'll talk about user input. I'll show you one way I'm using user input from the console. It's a method I'm using actually for some of the coding competitions because it's a little bit, from what I read, it's a little bit faster than this other method, which I'll also show you later on, not in this video though. So it says you can enter the bar, but you cannot enter the bar, but you can vote. And I spelled vote wrong because I don't have enough caffeine apparently. So let's fix that. All right. So that's if we hard code in the age, but let's create something we're going to create a instance of a class buffered reader. Okay, so we're going to say buffered reader, and I actually deleted out my age. That's why it's turning red here. It's saying, hey, we don't know what this is. I'll put that back in. Notice when I type buffer reader, it imports this class from Java input output buffered reader. Okay, so we're going to say buffered reader. Let's call it BR, and we're going to say that's a new instance of buffered reader. We'll talk more about classes in a little bit. And then we're going to have a new instance of input stream reader. And then in there, we're going to have, and notice I got another input for the input stream reader here. I'm going to do system.in Okay. And here let's bring back my age, int age. We'll just declare it. We won't initialize it, but then we'll say age equals, and we're going to want an integer. So we're going to do integer dot parse int because we're parsing a string into an integer. And we're going to do this new instance br dot, and we have a method that we can use, which is called readline. Okay. Now, you notice that it still gives me a red under here. So if I hover over it, let's just hover over it and see unhandled exception. So we've got to have this java.io exception. Now, a cool thing that I can do with this IDE here is I can just hover over this and do Alt Enter, and it'll give me to add a method or add exception to the method signature. So you're going to watch up here, it's going to add a little bit of code and it's going to add an import here. So I'm going to hit enter. And you notice it added this java.io input stream reader, but it also added this throws IO exception. Okay, we can talk about that later, but that's something that you need to have in case you're using this. All right. So now we can run this program and we can dynamically enter the age. But if I just run it as is, it's not really telling me to enter anything. So I should probably give the user some clue that they need to enter their age. So I'll say something like enter your age, something like that. All right, so now I'm going to build and run this. And I'm going to have some coffee while that's going. So now you see there's the red thing here. That means the program's still running. So it's waiting for me to enter my age. Let's say I was 17. I wish. And I hit enter and it says you are a minor. Okay. So yeah, so it does work. Now, if I run this again, rebuild it and rerun, enter your age. Let's put the real age, 46. So you can enter the bar. Sweet. All right. So that's a little bit with if-else statements. So it's pretty straightforward if you know other programming languages. If, else. You know, Python's like elif, Ruby's like ELS, IF. So a few of them are a little tricky. Java's not really that tricky in that matter. It just has plain old else if. Okay, makes sense. Helps do the control flow of the program. Okay, so another thing we can use, and I don't use these that often, but I figured I'd show them, is a switch statement. So we're going to do a new Java class. Let's call this switch, and we'll call it 009. Okay, so it's going to create a new file here. And we want a main method. Okay, and what we want to have here is we want to bring in that buffer reader. So let's make it a more dynamic program. So do buffer reader, create our instance BR. You can name it, you don't have to name it BR, but a lot of people do just because it's easy and short. It kind of stands for buffered reader. Oh yeah, BR. Yeah. Okay. And I want to go back one here. I want to say new buffered reader. And then we're saying here new input stream reader. It's giving me that suggestion. And then do system.in here. Okay. And what we want to have is let's have an integer called the day of the week. So we'll say int and the day of week. Notice I'm doing this in camel case. Okay, and we're going to just declare it and initialize it. We'll say it equals integer dot parse int and then br dot readline here. Okay, and again, you know, my IDE is saying you got to have that throws IO exception here and import it here. Instead of typing all that out, I can just hover and do Alt Shift Enter here, and I think it didn't do it for me. All right, so I did Alt Enter there and then picked to add this code. Okay, so now I can take in the user input from the console this way. All right, So, and I've got a little warning here just saying variable day of week is never used, but we're going to do that in a minute. Okay. So, and let's make this user friendly. Let's do a system.out.println and say something like enter the day of the week as an integer. Okay. And we'll just have here 1 through 7 just to kind of give them a hint, something like that. All right. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do a switch statement. We'll do switch, and we'll switch based off the day of the week. Okay. And then we'll have first case will be 1. And if it's case 1, we'll do system.out.println. We'll print the day you entered is Monday. Now, a lot of languages, you have a break here, so it doesn't go to the next case. Then let's do a case 2. Notice how it's moving the indentation for me there. And we'll say the day. And then I'm going to show you something after I type this all out. So the day you entered is Tuesday. Break. Oops. Got to put a semicolon. Case 3. Then here. The day you entered. I should probably use proper grammar here. The day you entered is Wednesday. I gotta go through and do all these cases. So case 4. This is if you have a lot of different cases. It might be an advantage versus using an if-else. And you can use else-if more than once, but it might be better for this kind of thing. So the day you entered is Thursday. I mean, you could do this with an if-else, but in case 5, do the day you entered is Friday. Do a break, and let me scroll up a little bit, and there we go. Case 6, we'll do the day you entered is Saturday. We're almost there. And I'll show you the default statement as well. So we'll do a break. Case 7, we'll do another, the day you entered is Sunday. Break and default. Okay, and then for the default, we'll do something like, this is if they don't enter 1 through 7. It's like, so I see you're that guy. Okay, so that's the default. Now, before I run this, let me show you something cool. So if I hover over this, it says switch statement can be replaced with enhanced switch. So if I want to do that, I can do Alt-Shift-Enter. Let's try that. Alt-Shift-Enter. Oh, wow, that looks a lot nicer. Sweet. Okay, so now let's enter this. And let's run it. So we've got our enhanced switch. So I showed you like old school switch. Now this is enhanced. Okay, so enter the day of the week as an integer, 1 through 7. I'm going to be like 10. So I see you're that guy. Okay, but if I go and rerun this, which I'm doing, you can see the little progress bar here. Let's enter a real day. Let's do 5. The day you entered is Friday. So that's switch. Not something I use a ton, but could be useful in a certain situation like this, where you have a bunch of different conditions based on cases here. Okay, so that was switch. Let's talk about arrays. All right, so let's go here, create a new file, new class, and let's call this arrays 010. And then we'll close this out. We'll create a main here. Create a main, and now we're going to create an array of integers. So the way I do that is I would start to type int, and then open and closing square bracket, then the name. So let's call it nums. And we'll say new, int, and then I'm going to give within the square brackets how many items I want to put in my array. So let's say I want 5 items in my array, I'll put 5 there, okay? So now I could populate this with like a for loop. So I could say something like for, and declare and initialize an integer I, int I equals 0, which will only be good for the for loop here. I is less than 5 because we want it 0 through 4, right, for the index of the array. Typical indexing based off of many different languages, 0-based. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say nums at index I is going to equal, let's do 1 through 5, so we do I plus 1, okay? All right, so we can run this, and nothing's going to print out, but we'll just run it, make sure there's no issue. I mean, we have a warning here, but the warning is that they're written to but never read. We'll read those in a moment. Okay, so we finished with exit code 0, so nothing, no errors, okay? Now let's actually print out these out, okay? So what we could do is we could say for, and we can do, this is like a for each kind of thing. So int num, and then do colon nums. And now we can do, we'll do system.out.println, and we'll print out the num, okay? So let's do this. We've got a green check mark in this corner up here. So my IDE is telling me, hey, this is good. This looks good. So and here we go. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. All right, so that's integer arrays. Let's talk about string arrays. And I'm going to create a new file for that. And we'll go right here, do new Java class, and we'll call this one string arrays 0, 1, 1. Okay, let's create our main method here. And so let's create a string array. So what I can do is I'm going to show you a little different way I can create arrays here. So we can do string and then names, and got to have the square bracket here. So string names. And then let's say I wanted to just put in the name. So I can do open and closing curly braces, and then I can put in the strings representing names. So I would have like Tim, Sarah, Joe, Sean, Aaron, Matt, let's say Ben, and I wanted my semicolon here. That's why I got the little red squiggly. Okay, so this is good. Now it's saying names is never used. Okay, so we've created a string array that way. So let's loop through and print out the name. So we'll say for string, and let's do singular name. You could do whatever you want. You could have string Joey if you wanted to, but convention is, for each name in names. So this is, so name and then colon names. And then what we'll do is we'll do a system.out.println, and we'll print each name. Okay. And we see we've got that green check mark. All right, so let's run it. Okay, so you see here, it went through, it printed out each of the names on a separate line. Okay, one thing I'd also like to talk about is we can access different indexes in the array. So let's do a system.out.println. If I wanted to print Sarah, well, it starts at 0, right? So I could print names and then within brackets 1 here. So this would print Sarah, right? So let's go and do that. And notice this is making a comment here. So this is ignored. So the last name you'll see is Sarah. So after Ben, after we loop through each name, printed Ben, then we got Sarah. Now let's say we wanted to print out the last name of the list. Some languages you can do names -1, and that'll print out the last name. But let's see what it's showing here. Array index is out of bounds, so we can't really do that. But we could do names dot, and then we can do length -1. This is going to give us the last item in the array. So this will give us Ben. Okay, so let's just confirm that and run it. We should see for our last name now, after Sarah, we should see Ben. And it's going ahead, and we see Ben. Okay, and just to show you, let's print out the first name. So first name would be Tim. Okay, so we can do a system.out.println. We'll do names at index 0 here. And if we run this now, our last name that we'll print it out should be Tim. That's all fine. Like some languages, you can do an array and you can do -1 for the last item in the array, like Python or something like that. But Java does not like that. Okay, so we get Tim as the last item in the array here. All right, next one I want to talk about is multi-dimensional arrays. So let me open this, create a new class. We'll call it multi-dimensional arrays, and this will be 0, 1, 2. Okay. All right. So we'll create our main method here, and now we can create a multi-dimensional array. Okay, so we could say something like, let's do an integer 1, and we're going to do 2 open and close square brackets here. So it's going to be a 2-dimensional array. You can do 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional if you really wanted to, etc. So int matrix equals new int. Let's do a 3x3 matrix here. So we'll do 3 rows, 3 columns. And so right now we're not going to have anything in there, but we could populate it with a nested for loop, which has a time complexity of n squared, which isn't great, but whatever. It's only really 3x3, so it's only 9, right? So I'll say for int I equals 0, I is less than 3. Actually, let's call it something more descriptive. Int row equals 0, row is less than 3. So we'll go through the rows first. The outer loop is going through the rows. We'll say row plus plus, and then we'll have our inner nested for loop will be the column. So we'll say int col equals 0, col is less than 3, col plus plus. And let's see, what should we do? Let's create a variable, integer variable. We'll say int counter equals 1. So we'll start by just putting in the counter. So we'll say matrix at the row and the column equals the counter, okay? And then we'll increment the counter with this plus plus is the way I can do it, okay? We have one warning here. It says contents of array matrix are written to but never read. Okay, so we could also read different parts of the loop. So let's read the second row, first column. Okay, and to do that, we'll print it out. That's what I mean by read. So print, let's do print. So we're going to print matrix. Second row is going to be position 1 first column is going to be position or index 0. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do that. We've got a green check mark. All good. And we see we get 4, which makes sense, right? Because if you have 1, 2, 3 in the top row, then you go down to the second row, it's 4, 5, 6. Okay, makes sense. Okay, you can also create multidimensional ways or multidimensional arrays using different methods. So we could, let's create a string. Let's do string, a multidimensional string array. We'll do two dimensions. And let's call this letters matrix. Okay, and I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to do open and close curly braces. And then I'm going to hit enter, go down to the next line. You see it indents it for me here. And I'm going to do something like in double quotes here for strings, B, A, B, C. And let me show you that. And I don't want to put a semicolon, I want to put a comma here. And we don't necessarily have to have the same length here. So I can make this 2 lines, and then let's make this one F, G, H, I. So I could do this. Now at the end here, I have to put a semicolon. Notice in this last one, I don't have to put a comma. Okay, so this is our letters matrix. Now, if I wanted to loop through and print out all of these, I could do that. So I could say for int row equals 0. Row is less than, we'll do letters matrix dot length here, and we'll increment row each time through. And then we'll say for int column equals 0. Column is less than letters matrix at the row dot length here, and we'll increment the column up. So this is taking into account the varying differences between the row lengths here, because I'm taking each row as I iterate through the outer loop. I go look then at each row and make sure that I stay less than that for my index. Okay, and then what I can do now is let's print it out. Let's do the letters matrix at the row and the column. Okay, and what's our one warning here? For loop can be replaced with enhanced for. Oh yeah, let's show you that. So if I go Alt Enter and I replace it with enhanced for, so let's do that. So we see that we've got this enhanced for loop, kind of like I showed you before. And now this one, we can do the same thing. Replace with enhanced for. Okay. So that's kind of cool. Let's try this now and run it. And you'll see that we loop through all the letters there. So we had 4 from above where we printed out this, and then we started with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Okay, so that's multidimensional arrays. The last thing I'm going to talk about is classes in this video. So let's open up our Project Explorer, and let's create a new class file here. We've been creating classes, but we're going to call this classes 013. And we'll create a main method in this class. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go back here and let's create another class. So we'll create another class and we're going to give it some different methods. So we're going to create a new Java class. I'm just going to call this one numbers. Okay, and now I'm going to create a let's do public static int, and we'll call it squared. And we'll take an integer a number that's an integer, and we'll just return num times num. Okay, and let's see, what does it give me here? Class numbers is never used. Method square int is never used. Okay, I can do this here too. Whoops. Okay, and so let's now go here and go back to our classes. Now notice these files are all in the same source folder here, right? So my classes will have access to my numbers class. So what I could do system.out.println, and then I can start to type numbers, right? So numbers is a default package because I created numbers in this same source folder. So I do numbers dot, and then I have this squared method that I just created. So I can do dot squared, and I can pass in an integer. I need to pass in some kind of integer. So if I pass in 3, well, what is that going to yield? It's going to print out 9. And to confirm that, let's just go ahead and do that. And so we get 9, okay? Cool. All right, let's go back to numbers. We'll create one more method. Then I'm going to create a student class after that and show you a constructor and some cool stuff you can do with that. All right, so we have this here. And let's do a public static, and we'll do another one. Let's call it exponent. And we'll have a base that's an integer and a power that's an integer. So we can raise the base to the power, right? So we'll create inside this method, we'll create a integer called product. We'll set it equal to 1. And then we'll do a for loop. We'll say for int I equals 0. So we're declaring and initializing variable I, that's an integer. I is less than the power, I plus plus. We're going to take this product, and I can do an asterisk equals. That means each time through it multiplies by, and we're going to multiply it by the base, okay? And at the end, we can return the product, okay? All right, so let's see, what do we got here? Method, oh yeah, we haven't used this yet, which makes sense because we haven't. So let's go back to our classes here, and again, I can do system.out.println, and I can access the numbers class that I created, so numbers dot, and I might wanted to name this a little bit better because I notice I have a number in there, so maybe I should have been a little bit more distinctive, but so to avoid confusion. But so I've got access to the squared and the exponent class. I'm going to use the exponent class. Let's raise 3 to the 4th power here. And that should give me 3 to the 4th power should give me 81. Okay. Everything looked good. Let's run it. And okay, so we get 9 for num squared, and we get 81 for the numbers.exponent. Okay, so that's one thing we can do. Let's now go back to our source folder here, and we're going to create a new Java class. Let's call this student. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just create that. And then what I'm going to do inside of here, get rid of this, is I'm going to say student, and then within parentheses, I'm going to have some parameters I can take in. So the name as a string, their GPA is a double, okay, and then their age is an int. And then I can use this keyword. So I can say this dot name equals name. This dot let's do GPA equals GPA, and this dot age equals age. And notice I'm getting a couple warnings here. Cannot resolve the symbol name. Take a look. I haven't had enough coffee. Let me take a look at my source code here. So we'll go to GitHub. What did I do? Oh. Okay, and let's do Java underscore lessons. My source files here. Student. Not awake yet. So I actually have to put these above. So I have to declare them above before I go here. But, luckily my IDE is showing me, hey, you are doing something goofy here. All right, so let's declare it. So we'll say string name, double GPA, and int age. Okay, so now we've got them declared above here. Now we still have a warning here. It says constructor student is never used. So this is what they call a constructor. It's constructing. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to use this constructor in some other methods. So let's create a method. Let's say, let's do a public void. Let's call it student description. Okay, and we're just going to basically print out the student description. So we're not returning anything because we have a void, right? So this is like what the method returns here. So void just means it doesn't return anything. So, but what the method will do is print out some information. So what we could do is we could print this dot name plus has a GPA of, do a plus this dot GPA, and then let me move this up so you guys can see it, plus and is plus this dot age plus years old. Okay. All right, so that's our simple method here. So student description is never used. So some of these are never used. That's basically what my IDE is warning me of right now. So what I'm going to do is go back and let's use them. Let's go back to classes here. And let's create a student. So we'll say student S1 equals new student. And now we got to pass in some things like the name. So let's say Tim, the GPA. Notice that's giving me the hint. Okay. Double GPA. That's what I should be printing in now. So I'm going to say 4.0. And then age 46. And we'll put a semicolon at the end there. All right. So we've created our new student, but we can see that we've never used it. Okay. But we can use a method. So what I could do is just do S1 and then dot, and I've got, well, GPA, so I could print out the GPA, I could print out the name, I could print out the age. It's pretty helpful if you're storing student information, or I can just go here to this void method, and that's going to actually print out the student description. So now if I run this, we get Tim has a GPA of 4.0 and is 46 years old. And also, if you go back to my student here, you'll notice I forgot a space right here. Okay, so that's student description. Now we could also create a something that returns a string whether the student is passing or not. So we could do public. Let's do public string, and a method is passing. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the GPA. So we'll do a conditional here. So what we'll say is if this dot GPA is greater than or equal to, I believe a D is a 1.0, so we're going to put 1.0. So if it's greater than or equal to a 1.0, that is passing. It's not a great grade. We can return just a string, something like the student is passing. Okay, and then we could say else, and we'll do a string return. So we'll say the student is not passing. Okay, so that's our is passing method, which takes into account the GPA here. All right, and method is passing is never used. Let's go back to our classes here. Okay, and now let's create a new student. Let's do student S2 equals new student, and the name will be Billy. Sorry, Billy. You have a 0.9 GPA, and your age is, he's a young one, 18. He's been partying too much. And what we're going to do is we'll print out whether he's passing. So let's print out whether Billy is passing. And so what we'll do is system.out.println. We'll do s2 dot, and then we'll go down and use this method is passing. And this should print that he is not passing. So okay, so the student is not passing. Okay, now let's improve upon this method a little bit, make it a little bit more, instead of the student, let's get rid of that. And we'll return this dot name plus is passing here, or this dot name is not passing. Okay, I like that better. Let's go back to classes here and close that out. And then let's also print out whether Tim is passing. So we're going to do system.out.println S1, because I'm the first instance of the student class, and is passing. Okay. All right, let's run this. And we get Billy is not passing, Tim is passing. And if you thought I passed on this tutorial, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't done so. That's a pretty corny ending, huh? Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.